I think what I've learned in working for this organisation and what I've experienced across this organisation and working nationally with government agencies, and I suspect everyone's got their own story to tell. I just want to kind of say, how does this stuff feel? And focus on the kind of feelings that we all have. So what I want to do is kind of say, what I've noticed and what I pay attention to is I think public sector leaders across the sector are actually undermining the legitimate opportunity to improve the sector, but they don't even know it. And I want to kind of unpack that over the next, probably 8 minutes now. I've already wasted 2 minutes. So that's kind of what I want to do. So I will just move to the next slide. I helped create a practitioner network about 5 years ago called Local Gov Digital. Basically, it came about because there was a group of us who were on Twitter bitching and mooning that loads of people didn't care. And some people online from the LGA just said, oh, okay, if we got a load of you together in a room, would you come and have a conversation with us? So we did. There was about 16 of us, went to the LGA offices in London, and we sat around, and it was like therapy for the first 2.5 hours. And then at the end of that, we kind of thought, okay, we're looking around, we're moaning that there's a lack of leadership in the sector that felt right for us. And the question we posed to ourselves is, do we do something about this? Or do we just accept and tolerate the crap that was out there? And we decided to do something. So we set up a practitioner network. It was, we wanted to try and just disrupt. So it felt like very much on the edge of the system, edge of the organisation, edge of local government. And we worked and we set up a website, we did all the basic stuff, we did some communication. And we started to find some things that we could helpfully do. So there's an annual event that's been going for about 6 or 7 years now called Local Gov Camp, and it's an unconference. An unconference is basically it's an event that doesn't have an agenda. So you turn up and the people in the room create the agenda there and then on the day about what they want to talk about, what they might want to learn. And we as a network took ownership of that, and we started to put it on every year, attract sponsorship, do all that kind of stuff. And it was always oversubscribed. 250 people attended it every year, had about 400 people wanting to come to this. And that was great. It gave us a huge warm feeling inside that we were doing something interesting. And that was partly because there is an increasing isolation in the sector, and I think we kind of see it everywhere. And there was a lack of clarity around an understanding as to why we exist in local government, or why we exist in public services. And there was this general acceptance that the current way of doing things was just what we had to deal with, and just we better layer more crap on top of that. And I started to think about, where does all this stuff come from? Well, why is this so? And I kind of look at the public sector now in two ways. I kind of say, there's people who come from a place of love, and there are people who come from a place of fear. And this stuff comes from a place of fear, and I don't like that. It doesn't feel very well for me. So I kind of thought, what can we do? So another thing that we set up was a little scheme. We called it unmentoring. If anyone's heard of an organisation called Nesta, they set up something called the randomised coffee trials. And basically what it is that you randomly connect people for about half an hour every 6 weeks. They get together and they have a conversation about anything they're working on. And what that does is help people just connect in a completely informal way. And it breaks down organisational barriers inside organisations and outside. And these things started to have really small impacts. But they lacked kind of real depth of challenge, so they weren't really fundamentally challenging the sector, or even really radically improving local government. Our aspirations as Local Gov Digital was to reinvent local government on a digital platform to save the world. I think we're still waiting for that. And we realised that actually, we are just part of a wider system. And if we're in a climate that is dominated by this kind of fear culture and is driving all these negative behaviours, And I've witnessed and been part of conversations in national context where leaders are actively behaving in ways that ensure that we do the wrong thing. And they make that legitimate because of their power base, because they are ahead of X or ahead of Y, or they're in charge of this particular organisation. And that feels pretty crap when you kind of think there is a better way. How come you're not connecting? So it kind of made me think a little bit more. So when I was asked to do something and talk today, I kind of thought, how can I scratch below some of this stuff? And what do I think that I want to look for in people? And what do I think I need to do more of to help come from a place of love? That's basically what I'm trying to talk about. And I kind of thought of three things. And strangely, I'm working bottom up. I don't know why. Maybe it's conceptual, because I think grassroots movements are far more powerful than top-down control. But that's just a subtle thing there. So I want to start, firstly, with curiosity. I think curiosity is one of those interesting words that that I think if you're isolated, you know, people always say children are curious because they're interested in everything. They don't see barriers, they don't see boundaries, and they just want to explore and learn, and they get excitement from learning new things from new people. And they also get excitement when they unlearn something. They think, oh, I didn't know that, or that's challenged something that I thought I knew before. So children always inspire me in this way, and I think children do this stuff instinctively, and somehow we unlearn this stuff as we grow up as people. So curiosity for me is the kind of first one. Compassion is the next one. And for me, I used to think a lot about empathy, and empathy for me, the way I kind of interpret the two is that I think empathy, you can care for other people, but with empathy, you're trying to care for people that you already relate to. And I think that just increases polarisation in society and in our organisations, is that we only really resonate to people who look and feel the same. And I think compassion goes beyond that. It's about moving beyond that comfort zone and to really get deeply into understanding how someone is suffering. And I think in public services, that is at the heart of why we do our jobs. Is we are built and inbuilt, have a compassionate model, but I'm not entirely sure that it's allowed to work because of the fear that drives so many behaviours. The last one is courage. And I think, for me, this is about kind of saying that we all, in moments in our lives, find the courage to do something we never thought we could do. And it feels like we're at a time in public services and you know, just globally, going all weird about that for a second. But actually, we need to be bold. We need to kind of find that courage and that inner strength to kind of say, I don't want to tolerate the same poor stuff that I was reminding myself, do not swear.
You failed that one.
Yeah, did I? Oh, so I'll say shit then. So if I've already broken it, I'm quite happy to break it again. So basically, that we don't want to tolerate the same shit that we've always tolerated. It feels like that the potential of human capacity is really amazing, and yet we look outside and there is so much stuff that collectively we do that nobody wants to see. Why is that? And for me, it's about finding the courage to be really compassionate for other people so that we can be curious to learn new things and accept that we may have to unlearn generational lessons that have got us to the point that we're in right now. So to kind of play that back, my question to everyone is, are you kind of coming from a place of love, or are you coming from a place of fear? So what I understand is that nothing exists in isolation. So if we want to solve the complexity of public services, all organisations need to come together in different ways, and we all add different value and different richness to that picture. But we have an inbuilt fear that says that organisation might challenge some of what we already believe to be our purpose. And we are so anchored around not wanting that challenge that we push it away. And that is implicit in the design of how public services are there at the moment. It's not explicit, because I don't think we come from these places of courage, curiosity and compassion.
I really like your definition of the difference between empathy and compassion. I hadn't thought of that before. I really like that. That was something that I will think about. my question is, when we talk about compassion, being compassionate, do you think, and I'm going to be deliberately challenging here, do you think we have been too compassionate and therefore we're providing too much care to too many people, and how does that square with our promoting independence agenda?
What a great question. I'm not going to pretend I know the answers to these things, so I'm just going to first say, does anyone else want to answer? No one? Oh, damn. I think there is a balance. So I think how I understand compassion is not about paternalistic provision. It's about just operating from a place where I understand someone's suffering, or their position, or their worldview, and I'm compelled to want to take action in the best interests of that person, which may not necessarily be me doing stuff for them. So as a parent, parents aren't generally compassionate. They want to direct their children. So parents who allow their children to learn, to unlearn, to learn, to unlearn, are ones acting from a place of compassion. The ones who say, do it this way, do it the way I do it, because these are the lessons I've learned and therefore you must do it that way, is not a compassionate approach. I think what we have done in the public services is we have interpreted compassion equaling we must provide something for you and it looks like X. And I think that's what we need to unpick, is really connecting to what does compassion really mean? What is the purpose, as you raised as well? Why do we exist? Is our role to constantly wrap our arms around everyone and say everything's okay, which is a very empathetic point of view because we care about this person, but actually someone living and learning their own lessons is equally as important as just supporting them. And I think it's that support and enabling aspect which I think links to the promoting independence. I think what we focus on is, just because we disagree, it means that we can't get on.
Yeah.
And I think if we don't focus on the disagreement and just focus on, okay, so you have a different understanding of something that I don't,
Yes.
that's where curiosity comes in, is I want to know what has led you to think the way you think and why you want to do those things.
Yeah.
So it's just accepting that my worldview is only made up of what I know now, and I know that tomorrow different experiences with different people will challenge some of those underlying beliefs that I have and also just enrich my day. And it's just having that curiosity to just think, I'm prepared to accept that tomorrow I'm going to learn something, or I might unlearn something. And I think if we focus on the things, the points of tension, we ignore the points of commonality that allow us to move forward.
Yeah, good point.
And I think what's interesting is that I think what I've kind of learned from experiences here and nationally is that, you know, there are points where people will determine their own perception of permission that they need, and I think that's fine. And that's the kind of self-confidence aspect and reflecting that actually, you know, your last slide, actually I'll just wait until someone tells me off and I'll just keep going. But there are points in time where, you know, hierarchical leadership needs to be unlocked in order for real change to happen. And I think it's just understanding at what point, how far can you go in an organisation, and how far can you go as an organisation? And they're not always the same thing. And I think if you want real change across an area or even a country, those two things align, people pushing the organisational boundaries out as far as they can, and then the organisation itself realigning with the vision of its own employees, and the leaders at the top of the organisation realising their role in helping to create that new space. I think that's something that will be the thing that we're trying to unpack over the next 5 to 10, 15 years as a sector.